She sat up fast. The blanket came with her. She pulled it to her chest over the thin silk slip she had worn under her dress the night before, the dress now gone. One strap slipped off her shoulder, and she could not remember taking any of it off. Then she screamed, one word, no. The man beside her jerked awake, white, shirtless. A face she had never seen, blinking at her from a pillow that was not hers in a room she had never booked, just as lost as she was. And across the city, the first of 240 guests were already arriving at the church for a wedding that was not going to happen. Her name was Janelle Hollis. She made empty houses look warm and lived in for a living. Nobody knew better than her how a room could lie. And the room she woke up in that morning told the biggest lie of her life. It would cost her everything, long before anyone bothered to find out it was not true. The stranger in that bed would become the only person who never left her. The people who were supposed to stand beside her that day were the ones who put her there. But that comes later. First, the knock at the door, then the open door, then the longest morning of her life. To understand how she got into that bed, you have to go back. Not far, 18 hours, to the night before when Janelle Hollis still believed her whole life was about to begin. She was 29 years old, and she had built everything she had with her own two hands. Her parents were gone. Her mother passed when she was 11, her father 3 years after that, and the aunt who took her in, a woman named Ella, who smelled like peppermint and bleach and never once made Janelle feel like a burden. That aunt had died too, 4 winters back. So when people in Atlanta talked about Janelle Hollis, they always said the same thing first. No family, as if a person could not be whole without one, as if she had not made herself into someone from nothing, alone. She was a homestaker. That was the job. When a house went up for sale, empty and cold, somebody had to walk in with furniture and lamps and folded throw blankets and make it feel like a family had been happy there for years. Janelle was the best in the city at it. She could take a bare room and, in one afternoon, make a stranger stand in the doorway and feel something tighten in their chest, feel like they were already home. She knew exactly how a space could be arranged to tell a story. She knew that most of what people believed about a place, they believed in the first 11 seconds before they ever checked a single fact. Remember that. It matters later. She had a daughter, Nyla, 4 years old, with 2 puff pigtails and beads that clicked when she ran, and a gap where her front tooth was working its way in. Nyla was the reason for all of it. The reason Janelle worked 12-hour days and took the jobs nobody else wanted and saved coins in a coffee can on top of the refrigerator. 2 days before the wedding, Janelle had taken 80 of those dollars and another 47 from her checking account and bought Nyla a pair of Flower Girl shoes. White, patent leather, tiny bows on the toes, $127, more than Janelle had ever spent on a pair of shoes in her life, and she did not spend it on her own. Nyla had worn them around the apartment for 3 days straight. Click, click, click across the kitchen floor. "I'm gonna be pretty, Mama," she said, turning in a circle. "You already pretty, baby," Janelle told her. "Those shoes just gonna let everybody else see it." She was marrying a man named Julian Devereaux, and the Devereaux family was not like the family Janelle came from, because the Devereaux family was the kind people in Atlanta lowered their voices to talk about. Old money, old name, the kind of Black family that had been somebody for 4 generations, that had a pew with their name on it at the right church, that knew which fork and which charity and which last names mattered. Julian was gentle and handsome, and he loved her, or she believed he did. And marrying him meant Nyla would never have to grow up the way Janelle had. It meant a real family, a father at the table, a floor that did not shift under your feet. His mother was a different matter. Constance Devereaux looked at Janelle the way you look at a water stain on a ceiling you just had repaired. Polite, disappointed, already calculating the cost. The first time they met, Constance had taken Janelle in from her shoes to her hairline in 1 single second, and smiled and said something Janelle would carry for the rest of her life. "My family has a name, dear," Constance said, soft as church. "You have a daughter and a key card." The night before the wedding, the Devereaux family hosted the rehearsal dinner in the ballroom of a hotel downtown, a tall glass building with marble floors and chandeliers and white roses on every table. The flowers were everywhere. That smell, fresh cut roses and lilies, sweet and heavy, it filled the whole room. Janelle stood in the middle of it in a dress she had borrowed, breathing it in, watching Nyla spin in her new white shoes, and for 1 hour, she let herself believe that the floor was finally solid. Her best friend was there, Keisha Daly. They had staged houses together for 6 years, and Keisha was the kind of friend who would tell you the truth even when it cost her, who stood close to you in every room without being asked. Keisha was watching the whole night the way she watched everything, quiet, taking it in. And someone else was there, a woman named Felicia Grimes. Felicia worked at the same staging company, and Janelle had invited her because that is this kind of person Janelle was, the kind who did not want anyone to feel left out. What Janelle did not know was that 2 weeks earlier, Constance Devereaux had taken Felicia to lunch. What Janelle did not know was that Felicia had been passed over for a promotion that Janelle got, and that she had been carrying that quietly the way some people carry things, letting it turn into something else. What Janelle did not know was that an envelope had changed hands. $8,500 to make sure the wedding did not happen. So all night, Felicia kept Janelle's glass full. Janelle did not drink much, never had, but it was her wedding and the champagne kept appearing, and every time she set the glass down half finished, Felicia was there with a warm hand and a warmer smile, topping it off, raising a toast, just one more to you, to the bride. 1 glass, 2, then a third that Janelle barely remembered, then a fourth. Keisha saw it. She did not understand it yet, but she saw Felicia pour that 4th glass, and she saw something in Felicia's face that did not match the smile, and she filed it away without knowing why. That small thing Keisha noticed and could not explain would months later be the thread that unraveled everything. But that night, it was just a feeling she could not name. By 11 o'clock, the room had gone soft and blurry at the edges for Janelle. She remembered laughing. She remembered Nyla being taken home by Della's old neighbor who was watching her for the night. She remembered Felicia's arm around her waist, steering her toward the elevators. "We're just gonna get you some air, sweetie." And then there was nothing. A thick, flat darkness with no bottom to it. If you have ever had someone smile in your face while they were quietly taking everything you built, you already know the particular cold of this story. Type the word standing in the comments because she is going to need every one of us before this is over. And stay close because what happens in that hotel room is only the first thing they take from her. Now meet the other person in that bed. His name was Desmond Whitfield, and that same night, in that same hotel on the 17th floor, he was sitting alone in a suite with a bottle of bourbon and a phone he wished he had never picked up. Desmond was 42 years old and worth more money than most people could hold in their minds. The Whitfield name went back 4 generations in Buckhead, banking and real estate, and his father, Harlan, had built the firm into something large before he died. But the thing Desmond had built himself, Whitfield Development Group, was larger. He put up towers. He reshaped whole blocks of the city. When the mayor needed a photograph, Desmond was in it. He was the kind of man who had learned somewhere along the way that everyone who got close wanted something. And so he had decided years ago that the safest thing a man could do was want nothing back. He was very good at it. Cold was just a decision he had made and never revisited. He had made it after his marriage ended. His ex-wife, Kayamil, had taken their son and moved to Dallas, and the boy, Caden, was 9 years old now, and Desmond had seen him 11 days in the last 14 months. 11. He counted them the way you count things you are ashamed of. That night, Caden had called him. "I don't really want to come this summer, Dad," the boy said. I got plans with my friends. Is that okay?" And Desmond had said, in the flat voice he used in board meetings, "Sure, buddy, whatever you want." And then he had hung up and sat there in a suite that cost more for one night than some people made in a month, and he had ordered a bottle, and he had drunk most of it alone because there was no one he wanted to call and no one who would have understood it if he did. He did not remember much after the bottle either. He remembered going down to the bar, he remembered coming back up, he remembered the door, and then he remembered nothing until a woman was screaming one word in his bed at 6 in the morning, and his whole life and hers was already on fire. Here is the truth that took weeks and a fight and the loss of nearly everything for anyone to finally hear. When Felicia walked the drunk, half-conscious Janelle out of that ballroom, her job was done the second the wedding party saw the bride stumbling. The humiliation was the plan. Make her look like a mess. Make Julian doubt her. make Constance right. Felicia left Janelle in the hallway of the 17th floor and walked away. And Janelle, blind, drunk, and lost, looking for a room to lie down in, pushed on a door that had not latched shut. Desmond's door. She crawled into the bed and was gone before her head touched the pillow. When Desmond came up, he was too far gone himself to do more than fall onto the other side of it. Nothing happened, nothing at all. Two strangers, both wrecked, slept on two sides of a bed, and in the morning a wedding died for it. But Felicia had watched which door closed, and before the sun came up, a quiet word reached the right people about exactly where to find the bride. So when Janelle screamed and Desmond jerked awake, the knock was already coming. It came hard. 3 times. Then the handle turned because the door had never really locked, and Julian Devereaux stepped into the room with his mother right behind him. For 1 full second, nobody breathed. Julian's eyes went from Janelle's bare shoulder to the bed to the shirtless white man sitting up in it, and Janelle watched something leave his face, watched the warmth drain out of it like water out of a sink. She had never seen a person change that fast. "Julian," she said. "Julian, this is not, I do not even know how I do not need to ask what happened," he said. His voice was very quiet. "I can see it." "You can see a room," she said. "You cannot see what happened because nothing." "Stop." He did not shout it. That was the worst part. On our wedding day, in another man's bed. Behind him, Constance Devereaux stood in the doorway in a cream suit, perfectly still, one hand resting on her own forearm, and she said nothing at all. She did not need to. There was the smallest thing at the corner of her mouth, the thing a person's face does when something they wanted has arrived exactly on schedule. Janelle did not catch it then. She would understand it later. Desmond beside her finally spoke, low and careful. "Everybody needs to calm down. I do not know this woman. I came up here. She was already. I do not know how she got in this room." "Of course you do not," Julian said. He laughed once, and it had no laughter in it. "Nobody knows anything." Janelle got up. She wrapped the sheet around herself and stood, and her legs almost did not hold her, and she crossed to Julian, and he stepped back. He stepped back from her like she was something spilled. That single step did more to her than any word he could have found. She stopped where she was. "I am getting married in 3 hours," she said. "To you. Look at me. You know me. You know I would never." "I thought I did," Julian said. And then he turned and walked out, and his mother turned with him, and the only sound in the room was the door not quite closing, and a woman in a hotel sheet learning that a whole life can come apart before breakfast. The wedding was canceled by 9 in the morning. 240 people were turned around in the church parking lot. The story went out the way stories like that always go, faster than the truth could put its shoes on. By that afternoon, every version of it had Janelle as the woman who got drunk and slept with a stranger the night before her wedding. No one said the word victim. No one asked a single question. The picture was enough. She drove home with Keisha in the passenger seat, both of them quiet, the radio off. When they got to the apartment, Janelle did not go inside right away. She sat in the car in the lot and looked up at her own windows, the home she had made with her own hands, every lamp and chair and folded blanket placed by her on purpose, and for the first time in her adult life, she felt like a guest in her own life. The flower girl shoes were by the front door when she finally went in. Nyla had left them there, lined up neat toes, pointing out waiting. Janelle stood looking at them for a long time. Then she sat down on the floor next to them in her borrowed dress, and she did not cry. She just sat there with her back against the wall, holding one small white shoe in her 2 hands until the light in the room changed. That was the first day. The days after were worse because shame is never quiet. The phone rang and rang. Aunties, cousins, a deacon from a church she had visited twice, a woman she had not spoken to in 2 years, all of them wanting the same thing, all of them asking the same question dressed up as concern. What happened? She turned the phone off and set it face down on the couch like it was a thing that could bite. The talk moved through the city the way it does. In salons and church basements and group texts, some said she had always been fast. Some said there must have been a secret man all along. Some said Julian was lucky to find out the kind of woman she was before he put a ring on it. Every version was crueler than the last, and Janelle began to understand a hard thing, the kind of thing you do not get to unknow. Once people have a story they enjoy, they stop caring whether it is true. The story is more comfortable than the truth, and comfort is what they came for. Then came the part that cost her the most, the part nobody warns you about. She had given up her lease. That was the plan. She and Nyla were supposed to move into Julian's house after the wedding, so a month earlier she had let her apartment go, told the landlord she was leaving at the end of the month, which was now 9 days away. She had a real estate world full of contacts and not one place to live. And the work she had spent 10 years building started to dry up the same week. Her boss called her in. Sharon Beck owned Magnolia Staging Group, and she had always liked Janelle, always said Janelle had the best eye in the company. That day, she could not look at Janelle for more than a second at a time. "I am not going to pretend I do not know what is going on," Sharon said. "And I am sorry, I am. But 2 of our biggest clients move in the same circles as the Devereaux family. They have started asking questions. I cannot have it attached to the company right now." She folded her hands on the desk. "I need you to take some time, indefinitely." "Indefinitely," Janelle said. "It is not a firing. I want to be clear about that." It was not a firing. It was a clean, quiet, well-mannered punishment for a disaster she did not plan and could not remember entering. Janelle nodded once, the way you nod when the words will not come, and she stood up and she walked out with her whole career hanging by a thread, and she did not let anyone see her face until she reached her car. Across town, in a glass office on the top floor of a building he owned, Desmond Whitfield was being handled. His family attorney was a man named Russ Coleman, 55 years old, gray suit, the kind of lawyer whose entire job was to make problems disappear before they had names. He sat across from Desmond and laid it out plain. "Right now you are lucky," Russ said. "Right now it is her problem. But you are Desmond Whitfield. The second this becomes your problem, it becomes a headline. Rich white developer, drunk black woman hotel room. You understand how that reads. It does not matter what happened. It matters what it reads like." "Nothing happened," Desmond said. "That is not a defense. That is a hope." Russ slid a folder across the desk. "I had someone look into her. Janelle Hollis. I want to know if this is a play." Desmond opened it. And here is where you should pay attention, because here is the man he was. He read about a woman he had decided, without meeting her, was probably running a game on him. He expected to find debts, a pattern, a history of finding rich men in hotel rooms. That is what his world had taught him to expect, and his world had never once made him question it. He found a single mother, an orphan who had raised herself from 14, a woman with a clean record and a good name in her field, and a 4-year-old daughter and a coffee can of savings and a career she was about to lose for being in the wrong room. There was nothing in the folder, nothing to find, and the nothing sat on him in a way he did not expect. He closed the folder and did not say anything for 11 seconds. Russ counted them too. "What do you want to do?" Russ asked. "Offer her money," Desmond said. "Make it go away." So Russ went to her. He found her at her apartment in the middle of packing boxes, and he stood at the door with a leather folder and a careful voice. "Miss Hollis, I represent Mr. Whitfield. He would like to resolve this quietly in a way that protects everyone. He is prepared to be very generous." Janelle looked at the folder. She looked at the man. Generous for what? For discretion, for letting the matter rest. "You want to pay me to disappear." "No one is saying that." "That is exactly what you are saying." She did not raise her voice. She was too tired to raise her voice. "Tell me, what is the number?" And Russ, who had done this many times, named it. It was more money than Janelle had ever seen, enough to buy a house, enough to fix everything that was breaking, enough to never worry about the coffee can again. She thought about Nyla. She thought about a floor that did not shift, and then she thought about something else. And she shook her head slowly. "My daughter is going to grow up, and one day she is going to be old enough to look all this up," Janelle said. "And when she does, I need the record to say her mother did not do it. If I take his money, the money becomes the story. It becomes the thing that says I did something I needed paying to hide." She stepped back from the door. "That is my number. He cannot pay it. Nobody can. Take that back to him." She closed the door. Russ stood on the other side of it for a moment, holding a folder full of money that a woman with 9 days to find a home had just refused. And even he, a man who had seen everything, did not entirely understand what he had just watched. When he reported it back, Desmond did not understand it either. Everyone took the money. That was the one thing he knew about people, the bedrock of it, the rule under all the other rules. He had built a whole personality on it. And a single mother about to lose her apartment had just looked at more cash than she had ever held and said no because of what a 4-year-old might read someday. He could not file that anywhere in his head. So he started, for the first time in years, to watch instead of decide. Janelle, meanwhile, made a different decision. If she could not buy her name back, she would have to dig it out of the ground herself. It was Keisha who handed her the shovel. They were sitting on the floor of the half-packed apartment, eating takeout out of the carton, when Keisha put her fork down and said, "I have to tell you something, and I have been scared to, because I keep thinking I am crazy." "You are not crazy," Janelle said. "What?" That night, the dinner, Keisha was quiet for a second. "Felicia poured you 4 glasses. I counted. You never drink. And she kept that glass full all night. And right before you went down, it was her. She walked you to that elevator. And the way she did it, Janelle, she had a look on her face, like she was doing a job, like she had done it before." The room went very still. "You never drink," Keisha said again, softer. 4 glasses do not do what happened to you that night. Not to a grown woman. Something was wrong. I felt it and I let it go because I thought I was being dramatic. I am so sorry I let it go." Janelle did not say anything for a long moment. She was a woman who staged rooms for a living. She knew better than almost anyone alive what it looked like when a scene had been arranged on purpose. The placed object, the angle that was a little too convenient, the story a room was built to tell. And now, for the first time, she looked back at her own worst morning, the way she looked at a house she was about to sell, and she saw the staging in it. She saw the hands that had set the scene. "It was not an accident," Janelle said slowly. "Somebody built that room for me to wake up in." "I think so too," Keisha said. Then there is a record of it somewhere. Janelle was already standing, already moving, something coming back into her spine that had been gone for 2 weeks. Hotels have cameras in the hallways. If somebody walked me to that floor, there is footage. If I walked there alone, that is on there too. Either way, the truth is on a tape in that building, and they are sitting on it. Stop here for a second because I want to ask you something and I want you to answer honest. She has lost the wedding, the job, the home, and her name. She is 9 days from having nowhere to live. And the easy road, the soft road, the one paved with another man's money, is still right there if she wants it. Would you have kept it closed, that door, or would you have taken the check and started over somewhere new where nobody knew your name? Tell me the truth in the comments. And if you believe a woman's name is worth more than the price they put on it to make her quiet, go ahead and subscribe, because the people who built that room for her are not finished, and neither is she. Getting the footage was not simple. The hotel would not release it. Hotel policy, the manager said, with the careful regret of a man who has decided to say no before you finish your sentence. There were procedures, there were approvals, there were a great many reasons a building could give a woman for keeping the one thing that could save her. But the story was already turning, and it was turning toward Desmond. A reporter got the name, then another, and the version that started to spread was the one Russ Coleman had been afraid of from the first day. Billionaire developer, drunk woman half his age, a hotel room he paid for. The internet did not need the rest. The internet had all it wanted. By the end of the week, there were think pieces and hashtags and a photograph of Desmond at a charity gala next to the words everyone was already thinking: predator. Powerful man. The truth did not stand a chance because the truth was boring and the lie was a wildfire. And here is the thing that nobody expected. The lie was good for Janelle. People approached her. A lawyer who specialized in cases that ended up on television. A producer, and through a careful middleman, a quiet suggestion that seemed to come from somewhere near the Devereaux family. Because if the world was busy hating Desmond Whitfield, the world was not asking who had really arranged that night. The message underneath all the soft language was simple. Confirm it. Say he took advantage of you. Say you were too drunk to say no and he did it anyway. The sympathy would be enormous. The settlements would be real. The world was already on her side. All she had to do was let the story stay the way it was. It would have given her everything back. The money, bigger than what Russ had offered. The public on her side instead of against her. Her name turned overnight from the woman who cheated into the woman who survived. One word, and she would have been the victim the world wanted, and Desmond Whitfield would have been buried under it. She thought about it for one night. She would tell you that. One whole night with her daughter asleep in the next room and 9 days on the lease and a lie that could fix everything sitting right there in her hands, ready to use. In the morning, she called the lawyer back and said no, and then she did something that made no sense to anyone watching from the outside. She made a statement on the record. Her own face, her own voice, no spin. I was set up the night before my wedding, she said. I was not in my right mind, and it was not by accident, and I am going to prove who did it. But I am going to tell you the truth about all of it, including the part that does not help me. The man whose room I woke up in did not touch me. Nothing happened in that room. He was as confused as I was. He is not the one who hurt me, and I am not going to put a crime on an innocent man's name to make my own story easier to sell. She looked straight into the camera. I have spent my whole life being treated as whatever people decided to see when they looked at me. I am done being a story other people get to write. The truth is the only thing I have left that is mine. I am keeping it. When that clip reached Desmond, he watched it alone in his office. He watched it once. Then he played the last part again. Then he sat in his chair without moving while the city went dark outside the glass. And he tried to fit what he had just seen into the world he had built, the world where everyone wanted something and no one ever chose the harder true thing over the easier paid one, and it would not fit. It would not go in. A woman who owed him nothing. A woman the whole world would have rewarded for burying him. And she had stood up in front of all of them and protected a stranger because a lie was a lie even when it paid. He did not have a category for her. And a man who has spent 20 years sorting everyone into categories does not know what to do when one person will not go into any of them. So he did the only thing left. He went to find out who she actually was. He did not come with lawyers. He came to the half-packed apartment himself on a Tuesday evening, and Keisha opened the door and her whole face turned to stone. "You have got some nerve," Keisha said. "I know," Desmond said. "I am not here for the case. I am here because she told the truth when a lie would have made her rich, and I have never once in life seen anybody do that, and I need to understand it." Janelle came to the door. She did not invite him in. She stood there with her arms crossed and looked at the man who had offered to pay her off 2 weeks before. "You investigated me," she said. "I did. You decided I was a liar before you ever heard my voice." "I did that too." He did not flinch from it, and that was something because most men would have. "I was wrong. I have been wrong about a lot of things for a long time, and I am only now starting to see how many. And I came to say I am sorry and to ask if I can help you get that footage. They will release it to me. They will not release it to you, and we both know exactly why." Janelle studied him for a long moment. "I do not need a rich man to rescue me," she said. "I can see that," Desmond said. "That is sort of the problem. I have never met anyone who did not." She let him help, not because she needed saving, but because the building that would not open its tapes for a single mother would open them for a man who could buy the building. And she was practical, and the truth was on those tapes. That was the bargain. Nothing more. That is what she told herself. But helping meant being around her, and being around her meant Desmond Whitfield, who had spent years keeping a careful distance from everyone alive, started to see things he had trained himself not to see. He saw the way she packed boxes at night, after Nyla was asleep, careful and tired, labeling each one in neat handwriting. He saw the coffee can. He saw a woman who had lost her wedding, her job, her home, and her name in 3 weeks, and who got up every single morning and braided her daughter's hair anyway, beads and all, and made it look easy, made it look like the floor was solid, even when there was no floor at all. And then there was a morning that changed everything, though it did not look like much from the outside. By then, Janelle had found one piece of work, a staging job, a big one, the kind that could put 3 months of rent in her hand and start to put her back on her feet, arranged quietly by an old client who did not care about gossip. It was scheduled for a Thursday. It mattered. It mattered more than almost anything had mattered in weeks because it was the first solid thing under her in a long time. Wednesday night, Nyla spiked a fever. 103, crying, scared, the kind of sick where a 4-year-old just wants her mother and nothing else in the world will do. And the babysitter could not stay past morning, and there was no family to call because there was never any family to call. That was the whole shape of Janelle's life. Desmond was there. He had come to bring papers about the footage. He stood in the doorway of the small bathroom and watched Janelle on the floor with her sick daughter, and he watched her pick up her phone, and he watched her call the old client and cancel the job, the one that mattered, the one that could have saved her. She canceled it in a calm, even voice, and then she put the phone down and sat on the bathroom floor and held her daughter, and she did not hesitate for 1 second. The staging job was full of fresh flowers. The client had wanted lilies in every room, and that morning she had been dreading it because ever since the rehearsal dinner, the smell of fresh cut flowers turned her stomach, brought it all back, the ballroom and the champagne and Felicia's hand on her waist. She had been bracing herself to walk into a house full of that smell. Now she would not have to. She had given up the money instead. She had not even weighed it. Desmond stood in the doorway and could not move because he had a son. A 9-year-old boy in Dallas he had seen 11 days in 14 months. And he thought standing there of all the times a deal had come up against a birthday, a recital, a weekend, and how every single time, without once stopping to feel it, he had chosen the deal. He had flown past his son's 8th birthday to close a building in Charlotte. He had told himself it was responsibility. He had told himself a man provides. And here was a woman with nothing on a bathroom floor who had just set fire to the only money in sight to sit with a sick child and had not even noticed it was a choice. Later, he would say it to Russ, the only way he knew how to say a thing that big, which was to say it flat. I flew past my son's birthday for a closing in Charlotte, Desmond said. She just torched the only job she had to sit on a bathroom floor with a sick 4-year-old. Tell me which one of us is the poor one. Russ did not have an answer for that. Desmond did not either. But something in him had moved that night that did not move back. He had spent 42 years believing that caring was a weakness a smart man cut out of himself early. He had just watched it look like the strongest thing he had ever seen. The footage came 2 days later. It was hallway camera footage, grainy, time-stamped, the kind of thing that does not lie because it does not know how. And it showed everything. It showed Felicia Grimes walking a stumbling, barely conscious Janelle out of the elevator on the 17th floor at 11:41 at night. It showed Felicia leaning her against the wall. It showed Felicia looking up and down the empty hall and then walking away and leaving her there. It showed Janelle alone, sliding along the wall, pushing on doors, and finally going through one that gave way. It showed an hour later Desmond getting off the same elevator alone, going into the same room, and it showed neither of them come out until morning when the door opened to a knock. It was all there. The setup and the truth both. Janelle did not go to that room to cheat. She was put on that floor, drunk past sense, and abandoned, and she found the nearest unlocked door the way a drowning person finds the nearest thing that floats. And nothing, the timeline made plain, nothing happened in that room at all. But the footage did one more thing. Keisha, watching it over Janelle's shoulder, froze the frame on Felisa in the hallway and pointed at the screen. "Look at her hand," Keisha said. Felicia, in the frozen frame, was checking her phone and the angle caught the screen for half a second, and on it just barely was a name, a contact, the person she was texting to report that the job was done. Constance Devereaux. The thread Keisha had noticed and could not name 3 weeks earlier, the wrong look on a smiling face, had just become the thing that pulled the whole scheme into the light. From there, it was not hard. A lawyer subpoenaed Felicia's phone records and her bank. The $8,500 was there, a transfer 2 weeks before the wedding, from an account that traced back through one thin layer to the Devereaux family. Felicia, faced with it, broke. She told all of it. The lunch, the envelope, the promise that it would just be a little humiliation, nothing serious, just enough to stop a wedding that should never have happened. The truth came out the way the lie had, all at once, everywhere. And the Devereaux name, which Constance had been protecting at any cost, took the kind of damage no amount of old money can paint over, because the city that had whispered about Janelle now had something far more delicious to whisper about. A mother who paid to drug her son's bride. Julian found out the same way everyone did. And when he understood what his mother had done, when he understood that the worst day of Janelle's life had been bought and paid for at a luncheon, something in him that had always been a little bent finally broke clean. He went to his mother. "You did this," he said. "You ruined her, you ruined us. You looked me in my face for 3 weeks and let me believe." And Constance Devereaux, 61 years old, in her own sitting room, did not bend. "I did what a mother does," she said. "Calm, certain not 1 inch of give. I protected my family. That girl had nothing. No name, no people, no place. She would have hung herself around your neck, and your children's children would have inherited her nothing. I saw it coming, and I stopped it, and I would do it again tomorrow." She set down her teacup without a sound. "You will thank me. Maybe not now, but you will." She never apologized. Not to Julian, not to the family, not to Janelle, not once, not ever. She lost nearly everything that mattered to a woman like her. The pew and the invitations and the lowered voices that used to mean respect and now meant something else entirely. And she defended what she had done with her chin up until the very end, because some people would rather be ruined than be wrong. Julian came to Janelle's door one last time. He looked smaller than she remembered, thinner, worn down to something honest, finally too late. "I came to apologize," he said. Janelle stood in the doorway with one hand resting on the curve of her belly, because by then she was beginning to show. She had found out in the middle of all of it that she was carrying a child. Julian's child from before the wedding, before any of this, a small life that had been growing the whole time the rest of her life was burning down. She had decided to keep it. Of course she had. That was never a question, not for her. She would show up for this child the way she showed up for Nyla, the way she showed up for everything completely, without weighing it. "I know the truth now," Julian said, looking at the floor. "Good," Janelle said. "I should have believed you. I should have asked one question, any question. I just saw the room and He stopped. "I am sorry." "Yes," she said, "you should have." She was not cruel about it. She did not need to be. Her voice was the calm of someone who had already done all her crying and did not need any volume to say a true thing. "You want to know what you taught me, Julian. You taught me that a man can promise you forever and walk out the first morning his pride gets bruised. Your mother built that room. But you are the one who looked at me, the woman you were about to marry, and decided in 1 second that a photograph knew me better than you did. She set the trap. You were the one who would not even check it before you left me in it." He had no answer to that. There was not one. "The baby is yours," she said. "I am not going to keep that from anyone, but you do not get to skip the part where you abandon both of us and then come back when it is convenient and call yourself a father. We will do this through people who write things down. That is the only way you and I talk now." She stepped back from the door. "Goodbye, Julian. Do not come here again." She closed it softly. It did not need to slam. It carried just fine. There was one fight left, and it was not the one anyone expected. It was Desmond's. Because by now, the thing between them had a name, even if neither one had said it. He showed up in small ways. He brought groceries and pretended he was just passing by. He learned the doctor's instructions for the pregnancy and reminded her when she forgot. He sat with Nyla and learned the names of all her toys and let her win at every game. He fixed the leaking faucet in the kitchen with his own hands, a billionaire on his back under a sink. And when Janelle asked him why on earth he was doing that, he said because it was leaking, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. His family found out. And his family, the old Whitfield name in Buckhead, came down on him exactly the way the Devereaux family had come down on the other side. His mother, Eleanor, 68 years old and made of the same cold stone as Constance, only paler, called him to the family house and laid it out. "I am not asking you to be cruel, Desmond," Eleanor said. "I am asking you to be careful. There is a child involved that is not yours. There is a scandal with your name already in it, and she is, well, a pause, delicate, deadly. A woman like that does not fit a name like ours. You know this. Your father would have known it in a second." And here is the symmetry of the whole thing, the part Janelle saw before either family did. Two of the most powerful families in the city, one black and old-moneyed, one white and old-moneyed, had looked at the same woman and rejected her for opposite reasons that were really the same reason. The Devereaux family thought she was too low. The Whitfield family thought she was too low and too black and too complicated. Two doors slammed from two directions by people who had never once had to wonder where they would sleep in 9 days. Janelle met Eleanor exactly once. Eleanor had summoned her, the way her kind summons people, to a sitting room with good light and gestured to a chair, expecting her to sit and be small. Janelle did not sit. "I did not come to fit, Mrs. Whitfield," she said, standing. "I came because your son keeps showing up at my door, and I wanted to look at the person trying to talk him out of it. I see her now." She gave a small nod. "I will leave the same way I came, on my own feet. I have never needed your family's permission to be a whole person, and I am not going to start needing it today." And she walked out on her own feet, exactly as she said. That was the thing that finally did it for Desmond. Not a speech, not a kiss, the sight of a woman with nothing, standing in his mother's perfect room, refusing to beg for a chair. He thought about the footage and the statement and the bathroom floor and the 4 glasses of champagne and the coffee can and the word she chose to put on his name when she could have chosen the word that buried him. And he understood finally and completely what he had been looking at this whole time. Not a problem to manage, not a category. A person more honest than anyone he had ever known, in a life where honesty had cost her everything and she had paid it anyway, and kept her chin up the same as Constance, except Constance held her chin up for a lie and Janelle held hers up for the truth. He went back to his mother and he said the truest thing he had ever said out loud. She protected a stranger when the whole world was begging her to bury him. Desmond said, "She lost everything and she still would not lie. I have spent 40 years protecting nothing in this world but myself. And I told myself that was strength. It was not. It was just fear wearing a good suit. I am done being careful. If being careful means a name like ours cannot make room for a woman like her, then the name is too small and it was always you who made it that way, not Dad." Eleanor did not bless it. Some people never do, but Desmond did not stay to ask her to. He did one more thing first before he ever told Janelle how he felt, because he needed to know it was real and not just words, and words had always been the cheap part for him. He booked a flight to Dallas. He went and he sat down with his son, the boy he had seen 11 days and 14 months, and he did not bring a gift or a deal or an excuse. He just sat down and said, "I have been a coward and a bad father, and I am going to stop starting now. And you can be as angry at me as you want for as long as you want, and I will keep showing up anyway, because that is what you do." And Caden, 9 years old and not sure whether to believe him, said, "Okay, we will see." And Desmond said, "Fair enough. That is fair." It was the first promise Desmond Whitfield had made in years that he had no intention of breaking. When he came back, he did not make a grand speech to Janelle either. That was not who he had become. He came to the apartment, the new one, the small, clean place she had found 9 days late and 1 block over, and he had a bunch of flowers in his hand. Cheap ones. Supermarket flowers, the kind in plastic at the front of the store, daisies, and a few carnations. Nothing a man with his money should have been caught holding. "You do not have to bring flowers," Janelle said in the doorway. "I know," Desmond said. "I wanted to." And she took them. And for the first time since the rehearsal dinner, the smell of fresh flowers did not turn her stomach. It did not bring back the ballroom or the champagne or Felicia's hand. It just smelled like flowers, ordinary, cheap grocery flowers, in the hand of a man who had flown to Dallas to start being a father and had come back to stand at her door with daisies. She went and got a vase, one of the vases she used to use for staging houses, for making empty rooms look loved, and she filled it with water and she put the flowers in it, and she set it on the table where Caden was doing his homework next to Nyla, who was coloring the 2 children he was learning to show up for. She did not say anything about what it meant. She did not have to. She put them in water anyway. That was the whole answer. Now let me take you forward, because the part that heals is always down the road from the part that breaks. 3 years later, there was a house on the north side of the city, a big empty new build that a developer needed to sell, and a staging crew arrived to make it look like a family had been happy there. The woman in charge walked the rooms with a measuring tape and a small spiral notebook, deciding where the warmth would go. And on the contract for the job, on the signature line, was a name in her own neat handwriting. Hollis Staging, her company, her name on the door, the woman who had been let go indefinitely over a photograph 3 years before, now signing the contracts herself as an equal for a developer whose properties she had once arranged for a paycheck and a boss who would not look at her. The developer on the other end of that contract was Whitfield Development Group, full circle. She staged his buildings now not as the help, but as a partner who set her own rates and was worth every dollar of them. She set a small green succulent on the windowsill of the empty house, the way she always had, a habit from the old days, a cheap little plant to make a place look alive. She did it now because she liked to, not because she had to. The floor under her was solid. She had built it herself, board by board, out of the wreckage, and nobody could pull it out from under her again because it was hers. The baby had come. A boy. Julian saw him on a schedule through people who wrote things down exactly the way Janelle had said it would be, and Desmond raised him the same way he raised Nyla and showed up for Caden completely, without weighing it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. 3 children, none of them his by blood, all of them his. A man who once counted the 11 days he managed to be a father now could not have told you the count, because he had stopped keeping track of love like it was a thing that ran out. And one evening, in the warm clutter of a home that was loud and full and real, Nyla, 7 years old now, came out of her room holding something small and white. "Mama," she said, "I found these in the closet. They do not fit anymore." It was the flower girl shoes. White patent leather, tiny bows on the toes, scuffed now at the heel, far too small for a 7-year-old foot, $127, bought with $80 from a coffee can and $47 from a checking account for a wedding that never happened on the worst morning of her mother's life. Janelle took them and held them in her 2 hands the way she had held one of them on a bathroom floor in a borrowed dress 3 years before, when she did not cry because there was no crying that would have been big enough. "I know, baby," she said. "They do not fit anymore." She did not throw them away. She folded them into a little box and set them up high on a shelf, not gone, just put away, a small white thing from a life that had been too small to hold what came after. Nyla looked at her and then around the loud, full house, at the man at the table helping Caden with his math, at the baby in the high chair flinging cereal, and she asked the only question a 7-year-old would think to ask. "Are we still going to have a wedding someday?" Janelle looked up. Across the room, Desmond looked back at her, and he did not say anything because by now they had a whole language that did not need words. "When we do, baby," Janelle said, "it is going to be the real kind. The kind nobody can take from you in one morning. The kind that is true all the way through, even the parts nobody is looking at." She had spent her whole life making empty rooms look like somebody loved them. It had taken her until 32 years old to stand in a room that did not need staging at all, because the love in it was not arranged and not for show and not a story somebody else got to write. It was just true all the way through. And nobody, not ever again, was going to take it from her in a single morning.